Welcome back to Face the State. I'm Arianna Bennett. Thank you for keeping it here. Well, this year, we've seen just about every governmental body in our area struggle with budget deficits and funding formulas that don't seem to be keeping up with the times. So what needs to change, and will that happen? I'm back with Washoe County Manager Eric Brown to talk about that. Eric, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
So a $27 million budget deficit to start this budget cycle is no small thing. You have to submit a balanced budget, correct?
Correct.
You got there. What are we doing to fill the hole?
Well, we are, first of all, we are managing our expenses more tightly. I think any county or city government, the largest expense category is people, your employees and the compensation and benefits that have to be paid. So I think you've seen announcements from Reno Sparks and the county that we're tightening our belts with regards to new hires and reclassifying and promoting folks. Because that's 80% of our expenditures. I think number two, in terms of what needs to be done, we need to find additional sources of revenue. There's a reason why all the counties, all the cities are in the same boat. It isn't gross incompetence or we're not spending their money wisely. It's the fact that the way property taxes are assessed and allocated in the state create an issue. And I'm not a property tax expert, so I won't get into it, but I would say that our county assessor, Chris Sarman, has some interesting ideas that I think ought to get some attention in terms of what we could do to maybe reform the abatements and some of the other aspects of how the taxes are handled, so that cities and counties have additional revenue. The last thing I would say to you is, I think as a county, Washoe County has a lot of upside that hasn't been tapped in terms of doing things like public-private partnerships. Other jurisdictions and counties around the country are doing this, where they're inviting private money in, investors, to get certain things accomplished. Think affordable housing or workforce housing. There's certainly a return in it for the investors, but it's done in a manner that the county and the community benefits from the output of those investments, and the county retain the flexibility to get out of the deal if we were working with a bad actor or something like that. Those are the kinds of creative thinking that I think for Washoe County, with all the lithium investments that are going to be coming up the road, with the technology investments we're still seeing out at the tech center, there is a lot of upside here. I think we're only bound by our inability to think creatively and allow ourselves to lean on the expertise, whether it's here or whether we import the expertise from somewhere else to make these things happen.
It is an interesting time to be a Nevadan, specifically a Northern Nevadan, watching our community change from what has kind of historically been this very Nevada idea of no taxes, very little government interference, very little government involvement in people's lives. And I think it's part of the Nevadan ethos to like it that way. But at the same time, as we grow, it's not feasible completely to be that way anymore. So it's been interesting watching the shift happen, and I feel like we're in another shift point. Because we're looking down the pipeline at a systemic deficit. This is not a one-time thing. This is now an every-time thing unless we fix it.
Right. And that's not to say that there aren't things that the county or the cities can't do to improve the situation. I can tell you, we've been working very hard in Washoe County to use technology wherever possible to reduce our need to increase headcount or bring on additional people. We're not laying people off to use the technology, but we are looking very carefully at how we can use technology to reallocate the people we do have. County has roughly the same amount of employees as it did in 2008.
Wild.
And the county has grown from, by 25%, I believe, over that same time frame. So I would argue we've done a good job of managing our resources. We're going to need to do more.
Yeah. I mean, it is wild that you are doing way more work,
Yeah.
if you're managing that many more people with the exact same amount of staffing that you had almost 20 years ago.
Right.
That's pretty wild. But again, no way to change that if you can't change the revenue. And Nevadans really don't like taxes.
They don't.
And now is a very bad time to be asking.
I do not disagree. And, as a county manager, sometimes I've learned that sometimes you have to bring people news they don't want to hear. But the business side of the job, the facts are what they are. And something is out of whack in terms of the revenue streams that come into the jurisdictions in the state. And until that gets addressed, we're going to have some problems.
Yeah, the property tax one is an interesting one. And it sounds to me like most people are in agreement that it's regressive, it needs to be adjusted, maybe not in a way that sticker shocks people or bait and switches them from what they're paying now, but maybe a reassessment on resale would be a solution there. Although that keeps coming up in the legislature and it keeps failing.
Yeah.
Is that something you were pushing for?
I stayed away from the legislature. I figured I had my hands full with my 5 commissioners and working with the cities up here in northern Nevada. But frankly, the commissioners have been more focused on partnering with the legislature and the governor's office. So they've been more focused on those things.
Fair enough. All right. So then looking down the pipeline, you mentioned, finding a new revenue stream. What else is kind of big on the to-do list as you see it?
Certainly mental health is still a huge challenge here in northern Nevada. As I leave this office, that's one of the areas I'm disappointed that I won't get to continue to work with the commission and the relevant agencies to see that improve. I'm sure you know, but a lot of our viewers may not know that this state is still exporting kids who have mental health needs. If your child, let's say, is on the spectrum with autism and gets triggered into violent episodes, it is possible that they will have to leave the state to find the kind of care they need, because we simply don't have the facilities, not just in northern Nevada, but anywhere in the state. We, as you know, were able to acquire, the county was able to acquire the old West Hills Hospital at 9th and Sutro. We're using ARPA money to refurbish that into a mental health facility, treatment facility. It will focus primarily on kids and young adults, but not exclusively, to try to address this key need. And we're facing headwinds, quite frankly, because of what's going on in Washington right now with the cuts in federal funding for things like mental health and Medicaid potentially. But that will continue to be a key need for this community going forward.
Goodness. Yeah, I mean, it is clearly a need. Having to send a kid out of state for something like that would be unthinkable. Okay, we just have a few minutes left, so anything else that we didn't get to that you think the public should know about?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure I thank, again, all the employees at Washoe County and in the office of the county manager, all the 24 department heads that I worked with. A lot of people don't know there's 8 of them that are elected. The remainder are appointed by either me or the commission. And we were able to do a lot of good things from an organizational behavior standpoint. I'm very proud of the fact that during my tenure, we do annual or every other year employee satisfaction surveys. The survey last year in 2024 had the highest marks that we'd ever seen. And that's despite the kinds of challenges that we've been talking about with elections and all the other tensions. So I just want to thank all the folks that embraced Eric Brown when he came to the community 5 years ago, and who continued to debate with me in some cases about key issues, how we manage the county from an operational standpoint, which is the purview of the county manager. It really has been fantastic, and I've enjoyed it.
All right. What about a message to the citizens, people who are watching?
You know, I think my message to the citizens would be that we need civility when dealing with county and city officials, local employees and officials. I witnessed firsthand what happened to a couple of our registrar voters during some very intense election processes, and honestly, nobody should have to go through that. And there were a lot of reasons for it. I'm not blaming the public for that, because I know you'll get letters, or I'll get letters about that. But it certainly had a lot to do with what we saw in terms of the ability of our registrars and their teams to do their job. I think we have a great registrar now. Andrew McDonald comes to us from San Diego, and I think he's going to bring some fresh energy. I just hope that whether it's him and his team or anybody else at the county, if you can be gracious, that really goes a long way.
All right. If we want good people in our jobs, we need to be nice to them so they want to take those jobs.
That's right.
Eric, thank you so much for your time. I sure appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that is it for this episode of Face the State. But for more information or to see past episodes, you can head to our website. It's 2news.com. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you next week.